Hello guys, how are you? We have discussed about Kafka in multiple videos. We discussed about like having an event-driven system. We practically implement event-driven system, but we couldn't discuss about how we can use Kafka in a real production level service, right? So today I'm going to demonstrate you how you can use the Kafka with the NestJS with the popular library called Kafka JS, right? So for this video, I'm going to use the very basic Kafka cluster, and which is set up in local, and I'm going to create a module, like kind of a common module for your service as a Kafka module, and then I'm going to show you how multiple consumers can use the same module, same configuration to listen to multiple topics and so on and so forth. So you can probably get this module and share as a common module to in all of your services. So then all the services can share the same Kafka configuration, and then they can use that to like subscribe to multiple topic and so on and so forth. Here in this video, I'm going to show you how you can like code in a way that everyone can understand the readability, right? Because when you write this Kafka based program, usually you consume multiple events. When you consume more events, your code get cluttered, because in the consume section you are writing like a lot of codes, and then it's really hard to follow, it's really hard to understand those codes, right? So but I'm going to show you how you can like separate your code for each event or each topic or something like that, and then you will have a more organized code. Okay, for that I just created an empty NestJS project. It's a very empty project. I haven't done anything yet. I just opened the project on a VS Code, right? So that's it. Even I didn't open the terminal. Right, so first thing first, so I'm going to install npm install Kafka JS for this one. And then after I install that, I need to tell you one thing. So I need a local Kafka setup, right? For this video, I don't need the streams or like SQL DB or anything like that. So I just need the basic Kafka setup. So I'm going to use a Docker Compose to set up that, and I'm going to add that like Docker Compose file into this project itself. So you can use the same thing. You can find this in the GitHub with this project link. Also, if you follow up with my previous Kafka videos, already you know I already shared those Docker Compose file on my GitHub. Okay, so what I'm going to do is Docker compose.yaml, and let's go to my Git and go to this Kafka tutorial and get the Docker Compose file and copy this one and paste it here, right? So looks good. So now I'm going to run a Docker cluster on local Kafka on a local. So Docker Compose up -d. Why? Because I want to run this in a detached mode. So now it's running both. So if you run docker ps -a, you can see Kafka and the Zookeeper both running, right? So now I have a working setup. So in the Nest, I'm going to create a separate module for Kafka, and I'm going to create two modules, Kafka module and employee module, and then you can usual employee module, right? And then you can use this Kafka module in like shared basis, maybe as npm package. We discussed how to create npm package from module, remember? Right, so let's do this. Nest g generate and module for module, and I'm going to use Kafka, right? Okay, create the Kafka module, and then I'm going to create consumer service and producer service. So for that, I'm going to use the same command, but I'm going to use a service, and it's a consumer service. Okay, and also I'm going to use producer. Right, good. So now if you go here, I have a consumer and the producer, and if you go to the module, you can see I provide these two. So I'm going to export these two as well. So in that case, we can use this in a separate module, exports, and I'm going to do the same thing, right? So looks good, right? So now let's go and implement these two. Let's first implement the producer. Okay, so let me to close this terminal and make this little bigger so you can see this clearly. So for the Kafka, I need to pass the brokers. So since I'm using the local, my brokers will be localhost 9092, right? So this is my brokers. And then I'm going to create a producer. It's a type of producer. Right. So now I have Kafka configuration and also I have the producer, right? So now I'm going to do something because I need this producer to connect when this program starts. So I'm going to use implements on module init, right? And then we need to implement that that method. And I'm going to make this async, and then this dot producer dot connect. Okay. So and also I'm going to use on application shutdown. So here I'm going to use disconnect. These are async method. Await this dot producer dot disconnect. Right, and also this should be await. Okay, so now we have basic setup. So now we need to write the produce method. So that will be simple async produce, and I need the record to produce. So this will be produce record type. Await this dot producer dot send, and what I'm going to send this record, right? So this is my producer, so I don't need the signal part. Okay, so this is my producer, right? So we have the producer. Now we have the setup. I mean, of course this has to come from the configuration, and then we have the producer created, and then we make the producer to connect on module init, and then we have the producer send, right? It's a very clean code. Okay, I don't need this test for now, and I'm going to implement the consumer in the same way, right? So I'm going to use this exactly. So these things, the calling method would be different, but for save some time, I'm going to copy this one, right? And instead of the producer, I'm going to create a consumer. Private read-only consumer. It's a type of consumer. So I can do something, because if I want to like disconnect this consumer, so let's do. Therefore, I'm going to create a consumers, and this has a consumer type array, right? I'm going to get a consumer type array, so then I can store the consumers and use them to disconnect on the module shutdown, right? So here what we can do is on application shutdown, I'm going to use for consumer of consumers, right? And consumer dot disconnect. Oops. Consumer. Okay, so this has to be const consumer dot disconnect, right? And this should be async method. Okay, right? So now we are good. Okay, so now what we need to do is we need to get this consumer created and get this consumer subscribe to our topics. Okay, for that I'm going to create a method called consume. Okay, for this one I need group ID. So this is important why we need the group ID here, because by design Kafka can consume single consumer group of multiple topics, no problem with that. But within a thread you can have multiple consumers to consume on the same consumer group to even multiple topics, right? That doesn't support. Remember, in a thread, within a single thread, you can have multiple consumers in the same consumer group, even subscribe to the multiple topics. So therefore, we need to have a separate consumer group for each consumer if you go with this type of design. Okay, and also I need the topic. Topic is type of consumer subscriber topic, right? Look like it deprecated, but we can fix it later. And also I need config, that is consumer config. Okay, const consumer is type of consumer, equal this dot Kafka dot consumer, and I need to pass the group ID. The group ID is the what we got, right? So and then like you can have multiple other configuration as well, retry, because we discussed so many configuration during our like initial Kafka video, right? So I'm not going to touch all those, but if you go here, you can have the consumer config. In the consumer config, this is the only required parameters. That's what I use, that one. Okay, and now consumer dot connect, right? Of course you need to handle errors here. I'm not catching those. Like you can have a catch, right? E, and like for now let's say console log console dot error E, right? For now I'm going to do this, but you need to do the proper error handling when you do real production thing. Consumer dot subscribe to this topic what I got from as a parameter, and consumer dot run. To run I need this config. Okay, and also this dot consumer dot push, I'm going to push this consumer, right? Why? This is optional, completely optional. Why I need this? Because I need to make sure when the application shut down, I can disconnect all my consumers, right? Because then, I mean, you can think, okay, why you have to do that? But if you remember my previous Kafka video, you remember you need to do that. Why? Because then Kafka can go for the rebalancing when the consumers disconnect from your application. Okay, right. So now, oops, what's the problem here? Okay, so this should be consumer run config. Right, so looks good. Okay, so now this is the way I explained before. Sometime I can see developers write code here itself, right? So like you do this, you take this event and go to the database, call this API and get the information and validate and all those things inside here, right? So now sometime you have to go with the switch cases. Like if the event type is this, you have to do this. If the topic is this, you have to do this. If the topic is that, you have to do that. It's complicated, right? So here, what we are going to do is, based on the topic, we are going to isolate our execution code to different classes, right? In that way, you can say this is a very clean code. We can understand how the consumers and what are the consumer configuration. And then, if the topic is this, let's do this. If the topic is this, let's do this. If the topic is that, let's do that. Okay, let's see how we can do it. Right, so in module init, I don't have to do anything for now. I'm good here. Okay. And let's remove the module init and we are good. So now what we need to do is we need to create a new module to consume this, use this one, right? So let's create like, okay, let's go back here and go to src. Let's delete this usual our app service and all those things. We usually don't use that. If you remember my NestJS video, I don't like those. And go to app module and remove these lines and also remove these two. Okay, so now let's create new module called employee module. Nest G module employee. Right, let's create employee service and control as well, and control. Okay, so won't be any magic here, it's just a basic implementation. So I'm going to quickly do that because otherwise you have to wait until I code, right? So I will do that. I'll pause the video, I'll do it, and I'll come back to you. Okay, right. So I just create a very basic API. I have a post method and a put method, create and update, right? And then when you go here in the service, in the service, you have this update call and the create call. It's just a very basic method, right? So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to publish events for two different topics, the create employee topic and the update employee topic. When the user create, it will publish the message to create employee topic. When the user update, it will publish the message to update employee topic, right? And then we are going to create two different consumers to listen those two by sharing our consumer what we just implemented. Right, so to do this for the employee module, I'm going to import Kafka module. Okay, I need this Kafka module imported, and then what I'm going to do is in the service, employee service, I need to create a constructor here, private read only. Kafka is Kafka service, producer service, right? Okay, producer service. And now here what I'm going to do is this dot Kafka dot produce, right? So this is our method produce. What we need to do is here, remember, we need to pass a record, right? The record mean we need to pass a topic, right? So topic mean create employee topic, right? So, I mean, a topic has usually a different naming convention, like you need to go to the data center, your application, your module, and so on and so forth. But here I'm going to just using this one, and then I need to use here like this one, and then I'm going to use messages, and here for the messages I'm going to use just one message. I'm just using the value, right? This is employee create, right? Ideally I need to submit the employee create payload, okay? And I'm going to do the same thing for the update as well, but here the difference is this will be update employee topic, right? This is employee update, right? So now if the user create employee or user update employee, I am publishing this message to Kafka, right? So now here is the important part. So now we are going to write two different consumers. We are going to isolate the business logic for the separate classes and then put into our application, right? So here I'm going to use let's say I like to name by the topic itself, create consumer.ts, okay? So this has to be injectable, and then export class create consumer, okay? And since it's a consumer, I like to implement with the on implements on module init, so then I can directly link with my consumer, right? And then I'm going to implement that method as well. Right, here what we are going to do is we are going to connect with our consumer service what we have implemented, and we are going to pass our topic and the group information, so then we can consume the messages, okay? So on module init, what I'm going to do is, let's get the constructor also here, and I'm going to get private read only consumer. So this is consumer service, okay? And from here I'm going to make this as async. Usually we do some async things here, right? This dot consumer dot consume. Oops, why this is consumer itself? Yeah, it should be consume right? So come back here, consume, right? For the consume, we need to first pass the group ID, right? Let's say this is a create client, right? Create group or something like that. And then we need to pass the topic. What is the topic we are going to listen here, right? And we are going to say topic is create employee, right? And then we need to pass the config. Config is the place where we say exactly what we need to do when the message comes. Okay, so let's do that. Right. So let's say I'm going to say each message I'm going to get 3 values: topic and partition and message. I'm going to use a destruct and I'm going to use the async here. And also then I'm going to use this. Let's say for now I'm just going to use the console log as source, so we can make sure we know where this come from. So this is create consumer, right? This is printed by the create consumer. And then I'm going to print the message itself, and then it would be message dot value dot toString. And then also I'm going to add partition, and that would be partition dot toString. And also then I'm going to print the topic, and that would be topic dot toString, right? So cool. I just printing it here. Like there can be complicated business logic behind this, like whatever you get the message or get the payload and do like maybe 10-20 API calls, database calls, maybe so many things. But here I'm just logging it just to make sure we know what happened. Okay, right? So cool. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy this and I'm going to paste it as a new file just to get the update consumer, right? So I'm going to do is here it would be update consumer, right? So that means we are going to listen 2 different topics, right? And we are going to isolate those business logic for 2 different classes. Okay, see what we are going to do here, and it would be update client group, and then here topic is update employee, and then this is update consumer, right? So what important here, only this one, this has to be exactly matched with this one. So what we are sending in the producer, so that is all what we need. Other things like group name, that can be anything simply, and the source is just we adding as a I didn't understand, right? Okay, cool. I think we are good now. And so what we need to do is we need to go to employee module here, and we need to add this. Okay, we have to create consumers because we forgot to update here the class name. It has to be update consumer, right? So now we need to come back here again, and we need to add create consumer and update consumer. Okay, so we need to add those 2, and I think we're good to go. Let's try to execute this one. So let's run this one. Okay, let's clear this and send a request. Okay, it says 201 created. It's a create call, and then let's try to send the one update call, and that also printing, right? So if you see here, right, I'm going to send this is update, create, and then update, 3 calls, right? So you can see here update, create, and update, right? So what we have done here, we just like it's same like the Kafka tutorial we have done before, but here important thing is you can see here what you need to do when the employee create that business logic completely isolated for a different class itself, where what you have to do with when the update employee update call, right? So that means topic wise we have separate the logics, then we don't have a cluttered one, and when someone comes, like probably we can put in the single directory, when someone come And when other developer look into the code, then they can get directly see, okay, this is what we are going to do with each one, right? So, and if you're interested to know about the Kafka streams and those type of stream processing, how we can do those things, and our format, and why our format, and what the benefit of those, just comment here or send me a message. Then I'm so happy to discuss about those as well. Then until I see you again, stay safe, take care.